In this video, we're going to be looking at tags within RemNote and how we can use tags to help us organize the flashcards we're using to memorize the Bible. So on the screen here, I've imported the text for chapter 1 of Galatians and made each verse its own flashcard. Now you can see there are 24 verses within Galatians chapter 1. If we were trying to memorize the whole chapter, we probably don't want to look at 24 flashcards at a time. Our progress will probably be much slower than if we look at, say, 3, 4, or 5 flashcards at a time as we're trying to initially memorize it. So one way we can actually reduce the number of flashcards we want to focus on is to use something called tags. Basically what tagging is in RemNote is we can tag any one rem, one dot point, with a different rem. So for example here, this first rem underneath chapter 1, which is verse 1, we can tag that by typing in the hash key twice. This search dialog box will come up, and then we can type in the rem that we want to tag verse 1 with. Now we are going to tag it with a rem I've named current. So if we click current, we can now see that chapter 1 verse 1 is tagged with the rem current. And using the word current to indicate that these are the verses I'm currently trying to memorize, let's go through and tag just a couple more rem with the tag current. So we'll do 5, the first 5 verses of Galatians. Okay, so we can now see that all 5 verses in Galatians chapter 1 verses 1 to 5 are all tagged with current. And if we click on current, we can open up a new document. Now, when you initially tag a rem, it will naturally list them at the bottom as tagged rem based on date. Now, I find it easier to keep them unsorted. And the reason I find it easier to keep them unsorted is it keeps a couple of things. It keeps the hierarchy in the order you had it. Now, if we click on this, we can actually see this is coming from Bible Memory, Memorizing Galatians chapter 1. And we can click chapter 1 or even click Memorizing Galatians to import that in here. But what we can see is just by tagging those 5 rem with current, they now all appear in the bottom of the current rem page. And we can actually click on these 3 ellipses at the top and practice all cards within here. And if we practice all cards within here, you'll notice that the first 5 verses of Galatians, each card being 2 directional, so quoting the text or quoting the verse number, for a total of 10 cards. And so this can be useful when we are trying to restrict the particular verses that we're wanting to look at. And if we, say for example, master verse 1, or we can just cross it out, press the cross arrow here and untag it. So verse 1 is no longer tagged as a current verse, maybe because we feel like we've memorized it. But something else that's useful for tagging is that we're not restricted to any one place in RemNote. We can tag any single rem anywhere in our knowledge base with the same tag. So if we go into memorizing Ephesians, for example, we can tag one of these verses with current. And let's actually tag both of these verses with current. And if we open current back up again, then we can now see there are 6 tagged rem. 2 come from memorizing Ephesians chapter 1, and 4 of them come from memorizing Galatians chapter 1. And again, once we feel like we've memorized a verse, we can just get rid of the current tag. The other thing you'll notice is when I hover over the current tag, it shows a preview. This setting, I believe, is turned off by default, but you can go into settings and look up how to turn that on. Basically, when I hover over current, it will show me the list of current verses. Something else that can be useful if we go back to memorizing Galatians, we can obviously clearly see we've got 3 verses currently, but how do we make sure we don't overwhelm ourselves? Well, if we hold down Shift and then press the tag current, it actually opens current in a parallel window, so we can see all of the verses throughout our knowledge base that we're currently focused on. And there are 5 of them. So maybe we won't add any more because we've already got 5 that we're currently focusing on. And once we've mastered those 5, we can add in some more. Okay. The last thing I will say in here is that tags can be useful as well for categorizing the verses we are memorizing topically rather than just based on their chapter verse position in the Bible. So for example, if we go down to verse 11, where I would have you know, brothers, we could choose to create a new rem called brothers. And there are no rem called brothers, so we're going to create that rem. And now we've tagged verse 11 with brothers. And if we click on brothers and open up this rem, we can actually click find text references and see there are 2 text references. One of them is verse 11, which we have already tagged. But the other one is verse 2, which we haven't tagged. And we can click down here and tag this rem with brothers as well. And then we can close this. And very quickly, we've discovered that we have a topical list of where the word brothers appears in the verses we've currently set out to memorize. And we can do a custom study session to memorize the verses referring to brothers by again pressing those 3 dots, practice rem, and practice all cards. It is worth noting as well, if we go back to our original verses, we can actually tag a rem multiple times. So we can see that verse 2 has a tag of brothers and also has a tag of current. All right, so hopefully you find tags a useful way to organize your verses, particularly as you memorize more and more verses. You can either organize them as current verses or maybe memorized verses, so they can almost be like a status, or you can use them to categorize your verses by topic. Do you have any other thoughts about how you might use tags to organize your Bible memory within RemNote? Leave a comment below and with your suggestions, and I'll see you in the next video.